It just hit me.
Hello, everyone. It's Charlton. Don't subscribe to my channel. Do not subscribe to my channel. I triple dog dare you to not subscribe to my channel. I'd appreciate it majorly. So something hit me today. Maybe I'll get to it. It did, definitely, And so I watched a lot of the Amber Guyger trial today, Amber Guyger's testimony, which was highly emotional and intense. In fact, they had a break at some point because just as they were getting to the part where, the actual incident, she couldn't even keep it together. And they took a 10-minute break, came back. She was much more subdued and a different person. But then it restarted again at various times. And she underwent tough cross-examination. I think she was on the stand for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I didn't watch every single second, but I watched a lot of it. And then I just pieced through some of the other witnesses that they had later on in the day. So, nobody's more sorry than this family. I just don't need. I can't revisit that enough. Nobody's. They're never going to see their son again. It's just terrible. And she made bad decisions. She made bad decisions. There's no question about that. She could, and I think she knows that, but it's definitely not murder. I think that's absurd, and it's always been absurd. I don't know if that's been out there as a negotiating tactic for the prosecution or if it's for political reasons, and I think it's probably for political reasons. Prosecutors run for political office, later in life. Absolutely. It's really a shame that they went through her history, Amber Guyger, how she grew up. And worked through high school. I think she had a full-time job during the entire, a lot of her high school, and in college completely, putting herself through college, etc. But it's just a shame, that she's not. She doesn't kind of have, she's not as bright as these attorneys. That's for sure. She showed herself that she's a good person, and but that doesn't help you these days. It doesn't, because you need to be smart to look out for everything that's gonna fuck, dude. It's hard to put in delicate terms, If she was smarter, she probably would have been. If she was smarter, she probably would have been. She would have been doing things like giving him CPR the entire time because she would have known she's going to have to answer for that. Okay, literally, these attorneys, they're smart. All of them. All right, the attorney who's the prosecutor, who's got his own ambitions. The attorneys for the families. Okay, you think they're not motivated by and they are smart. You think they're not motivated? They're not motivated by selfish interests. The prosecutor's not motivated by selfish interest. So is her defense attorney. Probably the one who's not, and again, I don't have to say this over and over. I can't say it. I'm so sorry for the family. But the one who actually isn't, is the least probably selfish is this girl, is this woman, Amber Guyger, who's just spent most of her life trying to do the right thing, trying to just work extra hard to get ahead, choose a career that she thought was an admirable career, something she could be proud of. And, and this is what it's led to. The thing that occurred to me today, the thing that hit me, I opened up with, was that this particular case is terrible, is not good for gun advocacy. And I do think that there's some gun advocacy group that's perfectly willing, in fact, even actively pursuing on YouTube. I'm starting to learn more and more how this works at throwing this woman under the bus because it just checks off a few check boxes, check marks, in addition to being definitely bad for gun advocacy, because you basically have somebody who has 5 years of law enforcement training or more. I can't even remember, 3,000 hours of training. Who because she went home and had a gun at her sidearm, basically made a few bad decisions and ended up shooting and killing somebody that was a completely innocent man. But if that gun wasn't at her side, That never happens, And I absolutely, even though I understand there's got to be, I accept that there would be a larger percentage, more than half, that actually think, she deserves to be found guilty of something, and I don't know what the percentage is, but it's not as much as I'm seeing reflected online. No way. No way. And I absolutely think, without a doubt, that certain gun advocacy groups, ones with tons of money, are all over YouTube, And it's not just regular human beings that believe in their Second Amendment rights. I'm talking about money. I'm talking about people who get paid to advocate for the Second Amendment. Not people who, they're not fighting for the Second Amendment. They're fighting for the right to make money off of advocating for the Second Amendment, period. And that's what occurred to me today. So, but she made some bad decisions. When she went to the door, she could have, when the door was, she heard somebody in the room. I'm not going to go through exactly what everything she said. She could have backed away, but she didn't. Everything happened in an instant. And, she thought she was at her home. So she proceeded in, and even then, when she opened the door and saw somebody at the back of the room, and she claims, she said, "You show me your hands," and then she saw him for a few seconds moving back and forth, and he at some point moved towards her and said, "Hey," and then she shot him, thinking she was in her apartment. And I do think that he did have earbuds in, and he couldn't necessarily hear what she was saying. That's another thing. I don't know if he was smoking weed at the time. I believe he was, because I believe one of the officers that testified for the prosecution, one of the first responding officers, claimed that it smelled like weed, and that could have been a reason why there was some confusion on, because he might have thought, this is a cop at my front door. I was just smoking weed, and not necessarily registered the fact that this person, he thought it was a cop being a cop, and didn't know that it was somebody that had mistakenly come into the wrong apartment. I mean, there's so much to her testimony. I can't possibly go over and analyze every last detail, and she made some bad decisions, but it's a shame, because I do think that there's a lot of things going on that, whether it's some prosecutor who's got, ambitions of a higher office in Dallas, there's a large black population in Dallas, you got, attorneys representing the family that got, stars in their eyes, I mean, there's a lot of money that's probably, going to be at stake here, for sure. And a guilty verdict plays into that, even on the criminal side, definitely. Many other things, dude. And, I'm sure the family doesn't know these things. Doesn't necessarily, they just know their son is gone. And, I don't know. I can't answer for how they feel. It's terrible, obviously. So, I saw one other witness they brought on there afterwards, another guy who lives in the building, who went into the wrong apartment. I think they brought a couple witnesses that did this. And the guy actually went out to walk his dog, came back in to the building, and ended up going back into the wrong, I guess he went up an elevator, got off the wrong floor, and went into somebody else's apartment. And even while he was in that apartment, didn't even realize that he was in the wrong apartment until he saw the other person in there. Saw the lights were on. Saw it had furniture in a different place and didn't register. Saw a purse on the counter, and he thought maybe it was his roommate's purse. It was just an illustration of how frequently people do this. And they had another woman who said the same thing. And I saw this article here. Believe me, I could go through the testimony, a lot of it, but it's just sort of pointless. But this fact that I saw in here, there's obviously a problem. And at some point, they're probably these developers that build these buildings, and these companies that own these large multifamily, facilities that have tons of apartments in them, are going to start making adjustments to this because eventually they're going to start to be seen as liable. Where is it? That darn it. the lead investigator, Armstrong, who testified again today, and they weren't going to let him testify in terms of the reasonable list. She said this from the very beginning, that he wasn't going to be able to testify as an expert witness in that. But he testified in terms of, I think, in his experience of, when he's had to shoot somebody and or been in a situation or just about to shoot somebody, how your heart just completely, your blood pumps so strongly that you almost can't even think. They went over how she didn't do anything, to help this individual. Did very little. She didn't provide CPR. She did it with one hand while she was on the phone with the other person, and completely flustered. She mentioned the sternum rub, which is something you do to keep somebody conscious or to wake them up. And it hurts when you press down on their sternum. And the prosecutor actually, I'm jumping all over the place, but the prosecutor actually, pulled items out of her bag. One of which was a first aid kit. Another one was a supply of gauze that you would use for somebody that was bleeding heavily. That she never even used. And things like that. And these are things that were all the bad decisions she made, even though that's totally irrelevant, to be honest with you. It really doesn't have anything to do with, before the shooting. And that's really that's what she's on trial for. She's not on trial that has criminally negligent homicide, manslaughter, murder. Those things have nothing to do with how she behaved after the person was shot. It all has to do with what she did before he was shot and shooting him. But still, it just paints her as this person who was only thinking of herself to the jury. I hope you got my point before. And if you don't, I don't really give a shit. But I hope you did. I was illustrating that really most of the people involved in this case are being way more selfish than this woman. She's just sort of a simple woman who made a huge mistake, and probably going to pay dearly for it, but we'll see. But one of the things, the lead investigator, he investigated this Armstrong. I think his first name is David, the Texas Ranger guy. And, he interviewed 297 apartments out of the 349 that lived there. 297. And Armstrong testified out of the 297, 46 of them had walked to the wrong floor and put their key in the door, as Guyger did. And that's a pretty big number. All right, that's the end of this video. Thanks for watching my videos. Please subscribe to my channel. Don't subscribe to my channel. Believe me, at this stage, I have a fair idea of what's going on. I do. And, I'll keep making videos and doing my thing. And I'll keep getting smarter. I'll see you in the next video. Later, man.